Level 1, the private between 1939 and 1945, the British Army put 3.5 million men in uniform. Of those 3.5 million, 383,000 never came home. That is 1 in 9. Look around you. Count 9 people. One of them does not make it back, not because they were unlucky, not because they made a mistake, because they were standing in a specific place at a specific moment when something moving very fast arrived from a direction nobody was watching. That is all it takes. That is all it ever takes. The question is not whether the war will touch you. The question is which one you will be. You found out which one you were going to be on a Friday afternoon in September 1939. The letter came. Plain envelope, government typeface. Your mother held it out to you without saying anything. Her face said everything. You had seen that face before on the day your older brother left for training in 1937. You never saw your brother again. You reported to your local regiment depot 2 weeks later. You were 19 years old. You had never fired a weapon in your life. They gave you 6 weeks of training. 6 weeks to learn everything that was supposed to keep you alive in a war that had already killed millions in the previous generation and that was now starting again with better weapons and worse intentions. The training sergeant was a veteran of the First World War. He had a scar that ran from his left ear to his jaw that nobody ever asked about and that he never explained. On your first day, he looked at your platoon, 32 men, most of them your age, and he said one sentence: "Forget everything you think you know about war." Then he walked away and the training began. By week 3, you understood what he meant. Everything you thought you knew about war came from newspapers and cinema screens. The real thing was different in every way that mattered. It was slower and faster simultaneously. Slower in the waiting hours and days of complete stillness. Faster in the contact events that the newspapers described in paragraphs happened in seconds. Your first shift started the following Monday. This is level 1. You are a private. You are one of 3.5 million. You are one of the 9. You do not know yet which one. Level 2, the Lance Corporal Dunkirk, happened in May 1940. You were there. Not in the way the films show it, the dramatic last stand, the noble retreat, the civilian boats crossing the channel in the golden light. You were there in the way it actually was: chaos, exhaustion, the specific terror of a situation where the plan has completely collapsed and the only objective remaining is survival. 300,000 British and Allied troops trapped on a beach by the advancing German army, waiting for boats that may or may not arrive, under air attack from aircraft that owned the sky above you without opposition. You had been promoted to Lance Corporal 3 weeks before Dunkirk. The promotion happened because your section commander was wounded in a skirmish outside Lille, and you were the next senior man, and somebody had to make the decisions. You made them. They survived. That was the entire basis of your promotion. On the beach at Dunkirk, you waited for 53 hours. You slept in shifts of 40 minutes in a hole you dug in the sand. The Luftwaffe attacked the beach periodically. You learned to read the sound of incoming aircraft the way you learned to read weather. The evacuation worked. Not perfectly 68,000 British soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured during the French campaign. Perfectly would have looked different. The boats came. You got on one. You crossed the channel in a requisitioned fishing vessel with 40 other men, so exhausted they could not speak. A woman on the dock gave you a cup of tea. You drank it. You could not explain to her what you had just come from. Churchill called it a miracle. The men who were there called it something shorter and less publishable. The important thing was that 330,000 men got off that beach. They gave Britain the army it needed to fight what was coming. Level 3, the Sergeant You, are responsible for 30 men now, not their performance, their lives. North Africa. 1942, the Western Desert. You have been fighting for 3 years. You are 22 years old. You have the specific quality that 3 years of combat produces in the men who survive it, not fearlessness, but the management of fear, the ability to be afraid and functional simultaneously. Rommel was good. The British Army acknowledged it internally, and the acknowledgement mattered because understanding your enemy's capability is the foundation of fighting them effectively. El Alamein changed this. Montgomery changed this. Second El Alamein, October 1942, 12 days of fighting. Your section went in with 30 men. It came out with 19. You wrote 11 letters afterward. You had known these men for 2 years. You knew their families' names. The letters took 3 days. You wrote them in the back of a transport vehicle parked in the desert. Nobody interrupted you. The other men understood what you were doing and gave you the space to do it. That is level 3, not the fighting. The letters. Level 4, the lieutenant, they pulled you out of the desert and sent you to Officer Cadet Training Unit. The promotion came with a specific instruction from your commanding officer. Your job is no longer to be the best soldier in the section. Your job is to make this section function without you. Italy, 1943, a different war, again mountains, urban terrain, a civilian population caught between occupying German forces and advancing Allied ones. The street fighting in Italy is the least photographed and least discussed element of the British Wii experience. Taking a single street in a small Italian town could cost a platoon as many casualties as a major desert engagement. You made your first command decision that resulted in men dying in November 1943 outside Cassino. Not a wrong decision, the subsequent review confirmed. It was the correct decision given the information available. The correct decision resulted in 3 men dying because the correct decision required them to be in a position where they were visible to a German MG-42 position that your intelligence had not identified. The review said, correct decision, incomplete intelligence, outcome unavoidable. You understood the review. You also understood that the review was written by people who were not there when the 3 men died. You learned something in Italy that the training did not teach. Correct decisions and good outcomes are not the same thing. The gap between what you decided and what happened is where officers live for the rest of their lives. Level 5, the Captain D-Day. June 6, 1944, you were in the 4th wave on Gold Beach. You had 120 men under your command. You had rehearsed the landing 18 times in training. The training had not approximated the fire. Nothing approximates the fire except the fire itself. Your landing craft dropped its ramp at 0740. The men went forward. You went with them. The next 40 minutes were the most concentrated experience of your life, not the most frightening, because fear requires the mental bandwidth to process it, and the 40 minutes did not provide that bandwidth. Just action. Movement, keep moving toward the objective. Your company took its D-Day objective by 1100. That evening, you sat in a farmhouse 4 kilometers inland from Gold Beach and wrote in your field notebook the names of the men you had lost that day. 17 names. The war in Europe ended on May 8th, 1945. You were in a German town. There was celebration, genuine celebration. The specific release of people who have been under extreme pressure for a very long time. You raised a glass. You felt something that was not quite joy, but was adjacent to it. And then, in the middle of the celebration, something else. Something quiet underneath the noise. The 17 names from D-Day. The 11 names from El Alamein. The 3 names from outside Cassino. All at once. Present in the celebration with the same specificity they had been present in everything else. You came back, but you did not come back the same. Nobody does. The men who came back from this war carried it the way your father carried the First World War, silently, completely, in the specific silence of someone who has seen things that do not fit into ordinary conversation. Your father never talked about what he saw. Not once. Not a single word in 23 years. Now you understand why. Subscribe, the next file is already open.